you guys have already met. You've done a workshop together. What's your history?
Well, I'll start if you don't mind,
Go
Andre.
ahead.
So, with Project Green, my organization, Grassroots Economic Empowerment Network, um, on a couple of different board meetings, I had two of my board members say, "Hey, we've got, there's this guy that you should meet. His name is Dondrea Brown, and they both said, I don't know where it will go, and what sort of partnership can be created, but I think you should meet him." And I finally reached out to him, and we actually sat down and broke bread together and just kind of got to know each other's story. And then shortly after that, we were both participating with WMCAT's um, Making Sense conference.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were presenting separately, but, at the same time, we were having similar impact on the students there.
That's good. That's good.
That's my version of the story, Dondrea. You might want to add more to it.
So I would agree. When Dallas and I met and sat down and started to talk, there was a lot of similarities with the end goal regarding finances. We want to empower people with information, equip them with information and tools to make the best financial decision. Mm-hmm. So that's how we've been operating, and the conference was explosive. And the reason why I say that is because we received so much great feedback from the participants. And like Dallas said, we had very similar messaging, which I think is powerful in itself, just based on some of the things that we've had to navigate and learn in the world of finance. Yeah. So our relationship has been really good from the jump, because we know that we are serving not only ourselves, our community, as well as the gifts that we've been able to receive from God, as we think about language, as we think about experiences, and really trying to help people overcome a lot of the barriers that they receive through finances.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to deepen the connection. I wanted to come on and talk about something that's on my heart. It's how we're going to make our money in the future. I wanted to call this Your Future Dollars, because we're seeing a lot of things, especially with the COVID-19. I want to talk a little bit about after that, but it has impacted so much of our finances. And now I'm thinking that the reaction to businesses, has been my experience, is that they say, well, wait a minute, we don't want this kind of thing to ever happen again. So what do I need to do? Who do I need to move out of the way? Who do I need to let go to achieve that outcome? And as we start talking about this and getting into this, kicking this can down the road a little bit, I think we can, be of help, be of service to some folks as we share with them, A, getting your finances right, B, how we're going to work the jobs or bring in the businesses or create our own thing so that we can kind of shield ourselves a little bit. Is everybody ready to get going here? All right.
Yep.
Good. To me, it's almost, what I'm noticing out there right now is it's almost like a fog is lifted, right? People believe, at least, that a fog is lifted, as if this COVID-19 was a fog and it was just going to come in and it was just going to go and everything was going to be all right. But I don't think that's the case. I'm already seeing, as I'm reading on some of the websites and stuff like that, companies are starting to be proactive as to how they can avoid having this kind of downturn again. Getting rid of employees, right? People losing their jobs. Blacks, people of brown hues have been losing their job at rates unprecedented, double that of whites, right? And this is not a black and white kind of thing, us against them. It's not that. But that's something that we need to be in consideration of as we move forward and how we're going to earn our future dollars. So I want to ask you guys, and Dallas, if I can start with you, I wanted to talk a little bit about Project Green, and I liked something on your site that I noticed, and I know you're upgrading the site. Save your green, know your green, grow your green, and then you talk about payday loans. Could you kind of give us the genesis of where you were coming from when you decided to start that organization?
Yes, I'll be glad to. So it's always, I always have to just kind of pick a starting point. So I'll go back to when I was in my hometown of Flint. After graduating from college, I came back and I started working at a bank there.
Mhm.
Um, so I was there for 5 years before I moved here to Grand Rapids. And in managing that branch, I got to see kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of how people in my community handle their funds,
Mhm.
from depositing checks and cashing checks to getting mortgages to purchase homes and everything in between. Um, so that was, I think, a major chapter in my life in terms of just really burning a passion for wanting to help people handle their money well.
Mhm.
Fast forward, when I came to Grand Rapids, and there was a brother at my church who was familiar with Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he introduced that class to the church. And I began to go. I took the class, and it was eye opening for me. Done a degree in finance, having been a banker. Uh, Still, Dave Ramsey's class was, step 1, 2, 3. This is how you get your personal finances in order. These
Mhm.
are, some biblical principles that will undergird those practices.
Mhm.
And so I really began to, I think for the first time, really understand how money works.
Let me have Dondre jump in because when you talk about the payday lending, I think I noticed that you said it was like, was it 300 some odd percent? Was it 390% interest?
390% is the annual percentage rate. Yes, here in Michigan.
I tell you, I remember when I was actually going to invest. I'm glad I didn't, because you probably would have been at my spot. Invest in one of those because the returns were just like crazy, right? I was buying debt at the time, and I was like looking at things that people seem to kind of always do, and to get ahead of it, I said, well, let me invest in one of those. To start one of those stores, it was only like 100 grand, right? And I say only, but it was 100 grand. But the money, 390%. You see, you can make that money back so fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
once I noticed, and I have had relatives that have used that service, I've had to, kind of bail them out, right? Because, they're using 2 and 3 and 4 of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they couldn't catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So, the big deal was it was growing at such a rate. They couldn't catch up. So it was like, hey, look, here's some strategies. Call them up, say, hey, will you take, 30% on the dollar, then try 50% and then pay it off and be done. Dondre, you have a similar experience, right? When I met you, you started telling your story about coming out of college. It's not funny, but with massive debt. Is that what started you? If you want to share a little bit of that,
Yeah,
and why you
so
started 1428?
yes. So for me, my family encouraged me to go to college because they said this is the way that you can make a living. You can make a lot of money. So they basically shipped me off to college. And I never forget the
Get
the
out of here.
conversation I had with financial aid, because they were kind of telling me about like private loans, public loans, unsubsidized versus subsidized. So they spoke this language that I didn't really understand. The only thing I did understand was you can pay it back when you graduate. I was like,
Oh, don't worry about
I
it
can
now. Pay it
borrow,
back later.
right, 4 years, I want to be a lawyer, I make all this money, I'll pay that back and then probably tip them, right?
Mhm.
So what happened was I started to develop and rationalize that when it came to making financial decisions. Oh, I'll pay that later. I kept putting it off. I'll pay that later. I'll pay that later. Where I started to do the same thing when it came to credit cards. My first credit card was at a store called Express, and it started off very slow. I could take care of my finances. I can pay the $25 a month, 0% interest, same as cash. I was like, I can do that. But then when I added on Best Buy, when I added on Firestone, when you started to compile these different, all these different forms of debt, it became hard to manage and difficult to manage because you didn't keep in mind those interest rates, or those cutoff periods, or the things around you, such as certain emergencies that could happen. So family calling saying, hey, I need to borrow X, Y, and Z. One thing about family, and I'll share this live, is when you give money to family, you have to understand that you're giving it to them.
That's right. There is no such thing
My
as a
concept of borrowing, I had to get out of that mindset because I'm like, oh, they'll just pay me back next week and then I can use that to pay my bill. But then when next week came, that didn't happen. So what I decided to do was literally write down all my expenses, right? Be real about where my money was going, develop a plan, because when I got my full-time job at a college, what happened was I was managing their budget extremely well.
Mm. You were managing their budget, but couldn't manage your own.
Oh my goodness. I was doing so great. I would receive like so much great feedback. I helped them start to implement organization into their budget. But when I went home, it just wasn't the same.
Mm.
So when I decided to apply some of those principles, coupled with, as Dallas was talking about, Dave Ramsey, because Dave Ramsey was termed the financial guru at the time. Mm-hmm. I really started to see, okay, there are biblical principles that I can apply to the way that I'm managing money to validate the way that I'm operating now, because I was receiving a lot of pressure from my family, as well as friends, etc., to go a different route. Like, why do you want to save your money? You should buy this. What about this car? What about these shoes? Things like that. Yeah. So long story short, coming to Grand Rapids about 2.5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to create an organization that is culturally responsive. And what I mean by that is I provide culturally responsive financial literacy to empower people to make decisions about their money. Because my philosophy is, at the end of the day, you're going to make whatever decision you want to make with your money, but let's see how we can give you more information so that you're informed on the best ways to make decisions about your money. So I called my business 1428 Financial Wellness, named after the scripture Luke 14:28, as Jesus was telling his disciples, before you build a building, you must first count the costs. So my goal is to help people not only count the monetary cost of their decisions, but the cost of their behavior, right? Their relationships. Like, there's so many things that impacts our dollars, and our dollars can impact. So let's talk about those things, because that's more of an internal control force. Mm-hmm. So I really focus on how can we start to shift and adjust our internal forces, so when we engage with the external forces, the banks, the financial institutions, stocks, bonds, etc., we at least have done some of the work internally to best manage whatever we're receiving in abundance.
That's good. I noticed, Dallas, that your organization also does workshops. I think we just lost Dallas. Mm-hmm. But I like what you said there, Dondrea. It was out of experiences that you started. And now I have a really big belief that if you have a problem, now this is just me, but if you have a problem, you start a business to solve it. Now, when I start thinking about your future dollars, I start thinking about how we can create from problems. And from those problems, we create opportunities. Right? So that was the big impetus behind a lot of stuff that I do. So let's talk a little bit more about 1428, man. I tell you, when I originally heard about your business, I thought, man, this is a good thing that we need. What have you noticed as far as pushback? Not everybody likes to get into their money. They certainly don't like people to get into their money. But what have you noticed in terms of adopting some of the principles that you lay out? How's that help?
So I think for a lot of people, first and foremost, it's the approach and the relationship building. I received a lot of feedback from people saying that it was great that I was willing to re-explain the strategies, use different examples, different activities, and then listen to them, because sometimes that's necessary when we're talking about finances. But as we think about teaching financial literacy in general, one of the gaps and holes is people are typically trying to tell you what to do with your money, and that's how it feels when people receive that information, as opposed to walking you through strategies, tools, and pathways to make decisions about what you ultimately want to do with your money.
Strategies, tools, and pathways. I like that.
Yep, strategies, tools, and pathways, because at the end of the day, most people want to do well or do something different with their money. They just don't really know, and they don't trust people, like you said.
Mm.
And then, as we know, finances itself can bring back memories, bring back trauma. There's a psychology to money that we don't really acknowledge when we're trying to engage with people regarding finances. So there's certain mindsets we have to start to adopt. Because again, for some people like myself, growing up, money wasn't something that we enjoyed. You know, my mom was stressed. She was frustrated. She was living paycheck to paycheck. So growing up, when it came to talking about money, those things came back. I felt those things.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The psychology of money, right? And how it conjures up. So that's almost like a money PTSD, right? It's like you having stress or remembering of the stress from a while ago. And it can affect how you do what you do going forward. That is an approach that I hadn't thought of, and how that could stop people cold. I'm really curious about this. I'm really curious about how we're going to earn our future dollars, but if we have some bad pasts in terms of how we handle money, that's going to affect how we earn our future dollars. Those future dollars, which are going to be affected. Now, this is one of the main keys that's going to be affected by robotics and automation. It's already happening. So we're going to have the means by which we earn our money is going to be competing against something that doesn't get tired, something that doesn't complain, something that doesn't ask for vacations, it doesn't file suits, right? And that is the automation side. Why I wanted to have us talk was because if you can deal with your finances well, right? Shore those up. The money that you do get in, even if it's sporadic, is going into good buckets. Would you agree with that? Is there something can you expand on that a little bit about, you know, how we earn that money in the future and what's going to affect it? Even if you want to talk about some of today's events, we're having riots, we're just coming out of the COVID-19. Go ahead.
Yeah, so first and foremost, Randy, you mentioned something that was very important, the PTSD of money, right? Think about COVID-19, think about the Black Lives Matter movement, right? These things are impacting our finances, whether people are saying, let's support Black businesses, right? Or Black businesses, minorities are being impacted by COVID-19 and losing their jobs. There's a lot of things, a lot of events that are impacting our money right now. When we think about our future dollars, we want to be able to automate our spending, saving, and giving, right? And the way that we start to automate those things is we build systems. So we have to build internal systems. Of course, we're human and we're not robots, so we are going to be impacted by emotions and all those other pieces. But if we take a little bit more time to do some of the work early on, right? Invest in your education, invest in yourself, invest in your why. You're more likely to automate your budget to go into those buckets. So one of the things I tell people is one system I like to use is plan, prioritize, pay.
Plan, prioritize, pay. And pay. Rock that out. Explain that out for us.
So plan is you dream big, right? What are some of the things that you're trying to accomplish with your money? Some of the questions that I've been getting is, how can you, in the current space that they're in, COVID-19, everything that's going on, how do they sacrifice personal versus business if they are entrepreneurs? How do they refigure their budget? How do they create another plan? So again, when I tell people when you plan, is you plan big, right? You literally give your money direction, even the money that you don't have.
Tell what to do. I believe in that. Because
with your budget, it will tell you or give you your lifestyle, right? Your income will let you know if you can afford it. So with your budget, you dream big. What are some of the things that you want your dollars, or where you want your dollars to go? What are some things that you want to pay for? And then the prioritize piece is essential. Because we know when we are prioritizing, we're thinking about our essential needs, right? Shelter, food, transportation, things like that. So once you prioritize to make sure those are taken care of, you see how much you have left over, right? And if you have additional money left over, then you continue to speak for each dollar. Zero-based budget. I tell my money where to go because if I don't, something or someone else will.
That's right. That's right.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I love that approach. I always say, give your job a job. The job is no longer this, there to do one thing. It's there to do maybe 5 things. So I love the idea that you give your money somewhere to go. Okay, money, you just showed up. You showed up in a week. You just showed up in 2 weeks. You just showed up every month. Here's where you have to go. Don't ask me. Here's where you go. I like the idea of automating. This is kind of using what we're noticing that's happening, because automation has affected some people's jobs. But now what it sounds like you're doing is using automation for our own bidding, to do our own bidding. I like that approach. You said something else. Man, it's starting to rain out there like really, really, really badly. So we might get some interruption. Oh man, it's coming down. Good. Good. My car will get washed. So I won't have to take it to the car wash. I just saved $7.
Yeah.
Right. So here's something I thought was interesting. Creating buckets. And I put this in my notes. Creating buckets to capture the downpour of future dollars. And it sounds like with your automation approach, that's what you're talking a little bit about, is capture it. And then what did you say? Plan, prioritize. Yeah. What was the other one?
Pay.
And then pay. So do you have yours set up now where people automatically come in, like they're using like the Mints of the world, where it comes in and the bills come right out?
Yep. So typically the way that, again, the external forces such as banks, etc., apps are set up is you can typically save money by automating your money. And before, like a few years ago, people didn't trust automating their money because they said, I may need this to pay this bill. I may need this to take care of X, Y, and Z. But if you do the work to start to plan, right, and then you prioritize, that payment becomes automated, because what you can do is say, for the rent, I already know each month when the rent is due and I'm able to pay for it. So I'm going to set up automatic payments, which means I could probably save $20 a month that way.
I got it. Yeah.
Phone bills are the same way. If you pay your phone bill in an automatic payment manner, you save about $5 each month, sometimes more. So that same concept of automating your dollars will actually save you money if you have a plan, right? But then in your plan, you have to be able to account for emergencies.
So we're being strategic and we're planning for the things. That's what I wanted to talk about when I say, hey, your future dollars are going to be affected. What about downturns? Let's talk a little bit about that. We are experiencing an unprecedented downturn simply because of the COVID-19 hit. Everything shut down. Everybody's money went away. The government gave us a little bit of a stimulus, but come on, a couple $100 goes away very, very quickly when you got thousands that are due and that are coming. So what should we learn in a downturn?
So one of the things you have to learn is the psychology part, right? How do you maintain a certain mindset to not use that as an excuse to spend even more money, right? Because some people, just as much as you can use COVID-19 to thrust your business, to increase your income, you can also use it to make excuses to say, look, the economy's going to hell anyway, so why not continue to spend money? So one of the things I like to encourage people to consider is growth mindset, right? And what I mean by growth mindset is, how can this moment be used as an opportunity to grow in an area that you knew that you needed to grow in? I've spent a lot of time in my business encouraging people to build emergency funds. So I started my business 2.5 years ago, and I always tell people, start to build an emergency fund.
So the business itself, now that's some Dave Ramsey stuff right there, right? I love Dave Ramsey. I cut my teeth on Dave Ramsey. He helped me cut up 2 or 3, 4, 5 credit cards, and I maintain his principles even today. So you give your business emergency fund too.
Everything has
It
emergency
pulls in
fund.
money. It has the business money to run. It has business to do its expenses, and then it has the emergency fund. That's very smart.
Because it's a person, right? Even when it's looked at, it has its own identification number, right? You file taxes with it separately. It's its own entity and its own person. So why not be able to do a copy and paste model with personal finances and then business finances? So in building your emergency fund, people believe that it's this huge thing where you have to have 3 to 6 months of your income right now.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is it's a process, because we all know within many of our budgets, we can probably spend a lot less on certain things. Short-term sacrifice for long-term gains, because you're trying to build behavior. One thing that Dallas
that's the psychology of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the psychology. Because one of the things that Dallas was saying before he went off was the institutions, right? Payday lending. That is a product of how we are not proactive. That's very reactive, and then it becomes a system that you get stuck in. Mm-hmm. Right. So in COVID-19, one of the things I encourage people to do is avoid payday lending by actually doing a little bit of research ahead of time, to literally go to Google and say COVID-19 relief funds in my state. There's so many lists of things that you can do. Another piece is calling your creditor, right? Your service providers, and talking to them. For me personally, even though I manage my finances well, I leverage these times so that I can reinvest into my business.
Absolutely. I did a whole video on it, talking just about that, right? It is some of the things I listed. Here are some things to do that if COVID-19 or if Corona is affecting your cash flow. I put it on YouTube. And that spoke to just what you're talking about, is being proactive to the degree that you can. Didn't know this was going to happen. But at the same time, now that you see that there are leverageable moments where we can now go to organizations and say, hey, here's how, and this is all upfront, not the fraud stuff. Here's how my business is being affected. Here are my books. And this is another reason to have the books right, have the budgets right, have where your money has gone. You can now say, hey, listen, here's my books. Here's where it was going. Here's where it is now because of this circumstance. And now you are leveraging what could be coming to it. Even some of the organizations that, I teach for, they were, giving money to entrepreneurs that we have taught that have been affected by it. And that has come at such good times for these entrepreneurs. Who would have thought by just going through a particular program that they now are eligible for some relief funds for their business, being able to show that the business is being affected, being able to show that you've been in business and have that born on date, and now this I'm 3 years old date, that all helps. This is speaking to what you talk about. These are some of the things we should be learning in a downturn. Psychology, growth mindset, making sure your business has its own entity structures, right? It's a separate person. That person should also have a budget. Here's something else I want to talk about, and this is more on what we should have been doing and what this has all taught us, what COVID-19 has taught us, what the rioting, Black Lives Matter, all of these environmental things has taught us. What should we be doing with our time? I look at time as a valuable asset, right? Because I can literally do math and say, wait a minute, if I'm out there now charging $150, $300, $400, $500 an hour, and I now can't charge that time is still there, the value of what you've done, learned, all that is still there. What should I be doing with my time?
So first and foremost, I think the most important thing you can do is self-care, right? Because we are experiencing so many things, and we're turning on social media and we're seeing acts of violence, or we're watching CNN or all these other news channels and absorbing all of these things that are going on, pandemics, protests. We have to figure out, how do we deal with that? right? How do we understand that we still have to navigate in that? So when I say self-care, it can come in many different forms. It could be shutting everything off, reflecting, right? It could be praying. It could be talking to loved ones, building relationships with people. For me, one of the things that I did was I connected with family that I haven't talked to in a while, right?
I was
And
calling
that really,
old friends from 8th grade.
right, seriously, because it really helps you during some of these times. So self-care is extremely important. The next piece is investing into things that you said you wanted to do. Because if you take yourself back to either December or January of this year, you kind of walked into the year saying that you wanted to accomplish some things. You wanted to read certain things. There are certain things you wanted to do. During this pandemic, we have been given that time, right? Now we can decide we want to do it that time, but we have been offered that time to say, this is my time now. What do I want to do at this time? Do I want to read certain books? Right now I'm reading Tiffany Haddish's book, Black Unicorn, because I told myself I wanted to read more things that talked about inspiration, those inspiring stories. Another thing you can do is invest in your skills, right? Invest in your talents, and really think about if you want your hobbies to become a business, right? And what that entails. Because a lot of us have so many skills and we probably charge some people, family probably gives us some money for it. But now we have to consider, do I want to take this further and expand it to a real business, not just a side hustle? And doing research to see what that looks like. So this time really allows you to be more self-focused. So when you come out of it, you actually come out of it with a foundation that you can expand. Because we are not going backwards after this moment.
That's right.
We are going forward. Another thing that I did was I fell in love with being online more. I was the kind of guy that was like, finances, I want to be one-on-one. I just want to talk to people. I don't want to, go out there and be all over YouTube, etc. But one of the things I realized is like, this is the new way of learning, right?
This is it.
This is it.
Investing in that is critical. Go ahead.
So I did some research on different YouTube videos that talk about finances. How are people engaging online with people with finances? I shot some of my own little personal videos. I even played around with motivational videos. I always wanted to provide motivational videos. So I was like, let me provide some of that. And then it hit me. I said, hold on, there aren't many people infusing fitness and finance. So I was like, a lot of people want to work out and a lot of people want to, get their money right. So how about I start to develop strategies where they can work out, but then work their budget out, right? Work their finances out. So it's financial fitness as well. So I launched, me and my business partner, we launched Ask and Get Fit. Because that time made us focus on, hold on, everyone's putting out these workout videos, the beginning of COVID-19. And then the stimulus check didn't hit yet, so everybody's worried about their money. Let's infuse the two so that people, as they, go out and do their lifestyle, we can talk about finances, but then we can work out and talk about finances. So now we're killing two birds with one stone. And so that's another project I've been working on.
That's one of those your future dollar moments. And that's why, again, I wanted to have you guys on, because we got to start thinking. I'm not even going to say outside the box because I don't like that term. I assume that there is no box. There's nothing containing me. It is just a do or don't do, like Yoda says, right? Star Wars fans. But, and if we are now niching down, so what you've done is taking things across industries and says, hey, what if I did this? And it's always, I'm constantly doing it. You know that. What if, right? Well, we don't know until you do it. Fitness, finance, right? And there's all kind of things that we can correlate off of that. I got one that I just started a site called Strategic Eating. I'm using business principles to have dietary success. Strategy, diet. So here we can take the principles of business and say, what if I applied those to dieting or to dietary success? What would that look like? You know what I mean? So what would that move? What kind of direction? So I started putting it together. These are the kind of things I believe as we think about our future dollars that are going to be so key. getting creative, creating things that didn't seem to match at first, rolling them out, doing like you're doing the studies, trying to figure stuff out, making sure, who's in this space, what can I, ethically borrow, what can I be inspired by, and then rolling out your own program and seeing how people receive those things. I believe those are some of the things that are going to help us going forward. I want to talk a little bit about this book that I read. It's right here that I'm reading. I had it a while, and it scared me so bad that I put it down. It's called Rise of the Robots by Martin Ford, Technology and the Threat of a Jobless Future. Now, this was written a couple of years ago, but man, do you talk about, scaring you in terms of what's coming. And then I started reading it, right? I started seeing some of the things he was talking about. There's this one company out there that was investing in an arm that flipped burgers. A robotic arm, it flips the burgers. And they're getting massive orders. We're already seeing, if you go to your McDonald's or your Wendy's, guess what? It used to be like 100 people back there. Not so much anymore. So we're seeing the automation affect not only the lower, paying jobs, but what Martin Ford talked about was how software is going to affect even the white collar jobs. There was
it's even impacting money.
Yeah, absolutely. Automation. So now, on the side that I'm coming from is I'm finding these companies, I'm investing in them, right? I started an LLC that I wanted to, invest in virtual reality, blockchain technology, AI, and life science. I hit the area that I believe that we're going to be growth trajectories, like you talked about the growth mindset, and then I created LLC literally just to invest in those things. This is the stuff that we got to do to start capturing putting the buckets to capture some of those future dollars. So as we're doing our mentorship with whoever's listening, think about that stuff, right? Get your finances right. And then at the same time, like you talked about, getting your psychology and that growth mindset. We got to stop being a consumer and start being a producer, right? You said, hey, look, I'm producing videos. If I can do a video an hour, I would. But I got to go get my coffee and I got to spend time with my wife and all that. But this is the new reality. And now we have all of the technology. Dondrea, I tell you, we have all of the technology that we need.
Yeah.
It's just getting into our minds that this is I ain't going to say new normal, but this is just the way it is. And that we have every opportunity to achieve some of those things.
Yeah.
Calendly. Did you know Calendly was created by a Black guy?
Oh, no. Wow.
I didn't either.
Awesome.
Calendly. So I looked him up and he started talking about how he, founded Calendly. Guess what? 30 plus million people a month are using Calendly. Creating something that it supersedes how you look because it's functional. Creating those kind of things is what's going to help us capture, I believe, some of these future dollars. There's something I wanted to ask you. And this is something that I had wrote down on one of my index cards. Building a skill or building a business. What do you think when I say something like that? Building a skill or building a business or building your business, however you want to say it.
So I think that those are two different things, because when you're building a skill, you're building something that's in you, right? You're leveraging something that is somewhere in there. You're expanding it. You're learning more about it. You're testing it, etc. But when you're building a business has many different arms, right? Your skill is just one thing. So when you're building the business, you have to look at the different parts of a business. Mm-hmm. I've been talking to a lot of people about some of the struggles that they have in their business, and it's because when they started, they really focused on the skill. They didn't focus on the business.
That's it.
So the finance, the marketing, the communication, the technology, the accounting, all of those pieces we have to consider when we're thinking about building a business.
That's right.
When you're just building your skill, I look at it as building a hobby. It's like, hey, I like to make candles. I like to make this. I'm just going to sell that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when you need to expand that market? What happens when you're still working your resource or your job and you want to go full-blown entrepreneur and invest more into your business? How do you make that transition? Again, treating it like a person, you have to really attend to all those different pieces of the body. The same thing with the business. So I see those as two separate entities where you're building a skill, but then when you're building your business,
Mm-hmm.
you have to get out your comfort zone. You have to connect more. You have to be in tune with different markets. You have to know the trend of where we're moving, such as technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to say, can my business have many different streams of income? And with that, it takes more than just one skill, right? Essentially, those are some of the things that I think about when you make those comments.
Yeah, and when I started expanding the thinking on that, it came out of a place of personal questioning. It's like, why am I learning to do all these things? Am I building a skill? And then I'm asking, what does that have to do with my business? Right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, if I build this skill, then I know how to do something. Now people will want to hire me. Is that what you want? So as we think about our future dollars, we want you to be in the space of building the business, leveraging the skill to someone that's all they do. Or you're going to be working in your business and not working on it. It's another way to say work in it or work on it. So that was the big idea. And that's what you're constantly wanting to ask yourself. As we think about capturing future dollars, working in the business is going to be automated. It just is. We now need to be able to go over to that automation, like you talked about with the finance part, and says, okay, I need you to do this, 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 and this every month when I get my check, every week when I get my check, every 2 weeks when I get my check. I need to work on the business. I need to create that next sales campaign. I need to go out and do more research to find out what's in the marketplace. I need to make sure I got an eye on my competition. Building a skill or building the business is something you're constantly asking yourself. And then you're also asking yourself, when should I stop one or the other? For starting off, you're going to get good at some stuff because you're going to be doing it by yourself. Unless you take what we're talking about now and leverage it immediately. You're immediately going out, finding a person that knows how to do the website so you can take that time to do something else. You're immediately going out, finding someone that knows how to write copy for you, because guess what? You can conjugate a verb, but it's not going to sound like a copyright verb. These are the things we're thinking about, right? And you say to yourself, well, what is that going to cost? All right. First, we go get the money, and then we go leverage that money quickly. I was telling someone the other day, I was doing a coaching, and I talked to them about getting pre-sales. I says, go get as many pre-sales as you possibly can. Here's what's coming. If you buy today, I'll give you a discount. Now, when you get the money in, you can now go hire the stuff to rapidly grow the business. And that's what I was talking about, building a skill or building the business. Get the money in as best you can, right? Bring it in fast. Then fulfill, because you got to fulfill, otherwise that's fraud. Fulfill by going out and hiring the talent that does stuff fast and does stuff that you don't do. And there's all kind of platforms for that now. As you notice, COVID-19 has just, created a proliferation of things like Zoom, things like StreamYard, things like all these different platforms that we can use to go out and get our money. So what, when your point on that was so spot on, man, that who's ever listening to this, as you're thinking about how should I now leverage this conversation that we're talking about, we want you to be out there taking notes. And our other guy, Dallas, he's gonna, I'm gonna probably do a separate, talk with him, and hopefully that his connection is better, and then we'll put it all together, or I'll just run two separate. I don't know. I'll try to figure it out. So this last thing, man, before I let you off the horn here, we talked about building a skill. We talked about growth mindset. We talked about processes and self-care, right? What else should people be thinking about going forward? Because again, What about the activism part? I don't know how much you want to touch on this. I got feelings about all this stuff that's going on. It is like a powder keg of feelings coming out right now, and you can explore it if you want.
Yeah. So before I jump into that, one of the things I also wanted to say was you talked about building the business part. One of the things that people are afraid to do is start to talk about bartering. Right? They may say, I can't pay a person, so I can't have them develop my website. But what skills or talents can you trade? What services can you trade to at least get you further? Right? So maybe that person can't build her website, but they can build a landing page. So that means you're not waiting for a full website to launch your business. One of the things that I've seen is a lot of people waiting on logos, waiting on websites to be fully developed before they start to test the market. That's one of the things that you were very good at helping me understand and realize through my business. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? You have to put it out there and be willing to, again, if you can't pay someone for a price, what can you barter? Maybe you can give them some of your product in exchange for something. I know when I first started my podcast, I was like, I don't know if I want to buy all this equipment, but I went online and was like, hey, is someone willing to, get some equipment for some of my financial literacy planners, my shirts, etc. And I met this guy and we exchanged products and we kept it moving. So for me, there's never a limitation that we can't go around as long as we're willing to be creative.
And
speaking of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Speaking of what?
I was going to say, speaking of being creative and not allowing limitations to cause a lot of barriers, we're in a space with Black Lives Matter. First and foremost, I think it's a beautiful thing that, and again, beauty in the sense that there's more solidarity and unity in our Black community to advocate for social justice and try to tear down the walls of injustice in many different systems, not just police brutality, in the way that businesses operate, in the way that capital is distributed to Black people versus white people. So there's more hypersensitivity to all of those things. But what can we do as minorities to leverage the moment that we're in? Because people are saying movement, and I definitely believe it's a movement, but it's also a moment. And what I mean by that is it's a moment that we have to recognize as a moment and decide how we want to move.
That's good.
So some of the things that I've personally been doing is a lot of systems building and relationship building. And what I mean by that is learning more from people who are different from me, not just racially different, but just different mindsets, different philosophies, etc., and having those conversations so that I can learn more. But the other thing that I've been doing is taking a critical look at my business. Is my business, the way that it's currently set up, a part of the problem or the problem, right? Or the solution, part of the problem or part of the solution. And how so? So I've taken a critical look at the way that my business is currently operating to see how I need to make additional changes, and if those changes are necessary based on where we are. So those are things that people can do internally with the things that they're trying to do. In the spirit of talking about this, one of my frustrations is everyone's critiquing the movement. Everyone's critiquing the protest. I want to be a part of strategy building. I want to be a part of the solutions, plural. There's not one solution. There's not only one way for us as African Americans to arrive at justice, right? More equality. There are many different routes. So what I'm doing in the community is engaging with people to share my experiences, but more importantly, listen to their experience and then walk away with a now what plan. So now what are we going to do? So those are some of the things.
Proactive. I tell you, I saw to the critics of the movement and stuff like that. I saw a video online, man. At first, I was getting ready to go, next, but man, the video really got into. I was like, but then she started speaking as if it was talking to me, and it was like think about not necessarily the what's happening. She says, now, you know, it's unfortunate that these things, these bad things are happening, you know, the looting and all that kind of stuff. She says, but think about this. She says, why are they doing what they do? Why does a person feel that that's what they have to do, that they have to take that moment to walk through the, you know, the glass to get a TV or to get, why do they believe they have to express themselves? And then she went into it, man, and I got all emotional, but she went into it and she says, now think about the frustration that makes a person pick up a rock when if they were just walking down the street, they wouldn't. What is it about what their experiences have been that makes them do that thing? She says, that's what we need to get into. And what you're talking about by talking with other folks that maybe don't look like you to help them understand that, hey, here's what's in us or in a person. It may not express. It's kind of like a gene, right? You may have a certain gene, but it might not express. But you bring in these environmental things, pollution, smog, whatever. You bring these things in, next thing you know, that gene expresses and it turns bad. Good gene turns bad. Good people turning bad. Good people doing bad actions. Stuff like that. But what is it that was a part of their experiences, a part of their life that made them feel that's the way I need to express it? And then when she talked about that, I was all fired up and it's like, you know, but it speaks to what you talk about, man. We gotta let people know what's going on with us. We have to increase the dialogue, right? Let's call it dialogue for dollars. I don't know. I come up with ideas all the time, right? Dialoguing for dollars. Dialogue. And I said this once. I had a piece of writing where I says, don't let race get in the way of revenue. Don't let politics get in the way of profits. And what I was really saying there was, listen, let's not let this get into way of us creating something awesome together. And don't get, you know, let the fact that I may, you know, like this person or that person get in the way of us creating something that could profit everybody, right? And that's just a call out. I hadn't done anything with that. This is the first time I'm actually expressing it. Don't let, you know, race get in the way of revenue, and don't let politics get in the way of profits. And what you're talking about speaks to that in my estimation. So kudos to you, brother. So let's go ahead and wrap this up, man. Is there anything that you want to, you know, ask of me while you got this consulting to the stars on the horn?
Yeah. So what are some things that, because I know you received a lot from myself in Dallas, but in your mind, what are some things that you think startups, right, can start to think about, in addition to, you know, technology being a new wave, but how can people literally start to launch their business? Because I have a lot of people who are kind of like, man, I really want to be an entrepreneur now, but what can they start to do to activate that entrepreneur gene?
The number one thing, right? If the gene wants to express, you let it express. You start off as small as you possibly can. Don't let the mindset let you believe that you have to be huge. You have to do one thing first, and that's find customers that might be interested in your stuff. One of the ways to do that is that you are now going into Google searches. I'll give you an example of something I did the other day. The other day, I went and did some keyword searching, right? And I went and keyword searched just a couple of things I thought might be going on right now or hot right now, and they were not. As I went to Google and I went to the keyword search tool, I plugged in some things that showed, well, here's what's happening. They had little graphs. Then I put words together and it says, well, here's what that shows. Then I put another word and it says, well, this is what's happening here. And then they would put them by each other. But there was one thing that just stood out in every single state in the country. And that was on the leadership space. So now, as an entrepreneur, you may say, well, I want to start this. Well, people might not care about that. What may be better is to say, what are people interested in, worried about, frustrated about? Let me start that. So in essence, is what you're doing is you're not presenting and starting your business from I perspective. You're presenting and starting your business from other people's perspective. What do people want? Now that's where your customers are. And if you now are using tools like keyword searching or whatever, or just looking at trends, looking at what's happening, and then saying, okay, I'm going to create an environment like you just talked about. I'm creating a movement. I'm talking about this, right? I want to have this. Now that could bring a whole new business. That could get you speakerships. That can get you sponsorships. That can get you into organizations, right? Now you're going to where people want and not what you want. Right? You say fitness and finance, and you may go, okay. Somebody says, I don't care about that. I don't want to do those two things to go together. I want to go and do my workout. But then you see, hey, wait a minute. What if I started something that dealt with bridging the gap between the divide of them and us? Let's get rid of that word. And all of a sudden, that blows up. It wasn't the thing that you were going to go to. It was the thing that was needed and the thing that could sustain you. That would be one of the number one pieces of advice I'd give entrepreneurs starting off. Go to what people want, not what you want, period. Go get those customers. See if they'll send you money, or not say send you money, but see if you can interest them with what you have to the point where they will pay you. And once you do that, now you say, whoa, I need to market this to grow this pool of people that obviously have shown that they want this because they're paying me. It can start off with an audio program, it can start off with a book, it can start off with a lot of little things that only take your time, but don't necessarily take money. Write that book in a weekend, put it out there, run a couple of ads to it, see if anybody likes it. Do the audio program, run some ads against it, just a couple of bucks to see if anybody buys it. You could do a one-day ad, $20, boom, right? That's what, 3 coffees? See if anybody gets down with it. Do a free website using Wix or something like that, Weebly, whatever you want to use. Put it up, see if anybody, these are things that just take time and not money. Run people to it, see if they dig it. If they dig it, you go pour the gas on that. That gets you going. That gets you to people that want your stuff, and they get you income. That's one of the biggest things I'd say to people right now.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So let's go ahead and wrap this up, man. I want people to go ahead and, if they want to read Rise of the Robots, because it'll start changing your mind on the kind of ways that you should be creating your future dollars. Start thinking about unfortunately, jobs are going bye-bye. Creating your own income is here to stay. Using the tools that are virtually, look, you can use Zoom for free. Come on now. You might not be able to do certain functionalities, but for the most part, you can use Zoom for free. Your phone, anybody that's got a phone, you may not even have to own a phone. They record a video, you put it on YouTube, that's free. You take that video, you say to people, hey, could you put this in front of your folks? I have no money. I have no budget. They do it, it gets some attention, drive those people to a website. Come on, these are things that we can do that don't take a lot of money. These are things that we got to start thinking about all the time. Yeah. So that's it, brother. I appreciate the time that we spent together today. It's we're a little bit early and we had a little thunderstorm and rain that affected our connection. Next time, what we'll do is I'm going to use a different service that is browser based, right? StreamYard. Have you heard of StreamYard?
Yes, I've actually been using it because of you. So
yeah. See, StreamYard, man. It's what, $20 a month. Come on. But it allows you to do some great things. You can even record if you're, I think, at the $20 level, and it performs. That's all I got to say. That dang thing performs, man. Yeah. Would you agree with it on having?
Yeah. Yep, I've been using it a lot because you're also able to go live on it. That's the one thing I did like, because like you said, you get concerned about the ability to go live, but yeah, using StreamYard is definitely different from other platforms.
Good. Okay, man. Well, until we meet again, go out there, man, and be purposeful and be productive and be extremely profitable. That's my wish for you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy.
Take care.